Welcome to the 59th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, still back in the office, we'll talk about whether presentation really matters in your tabletop games. I'm Adam.
And I'm Matt.
And this is the GameFor Podcast. GameFor is a platform to help connect tabletop gamers and to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. Matt and I are part of a software development and design company called MilkCan. And because most of the folks at MilkCan love tabletop games, we developed the GameFor app and launched it in early 2018. We launched this companion podcast in June 2019 to help tabletop gamers get more enjoyment out of their hobby. Due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, we hibernated the GameFor app in July of 2020 and plan to bring back a retooled version of the app for Android, iOS, and the web when gaming in person is safer. Until then, we'll keep bringing you this podcast to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming.
Yay.
Yeah. And we're working on that, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But first, what have you been doing in your hobby and gaming, Mr. Matt?
I have been, now that the basement stuff is pretty much wrapped up for my house being destroyed. Well, not destroyed, but...
Your house wasn't destroyed. It was... You had moisture.
Yeah, so... but now that my free time is starting to come back, just in time for the kids to go back to school, I was able to spend time painting a lot this past couple weeks. So I zenithal highlighted probably about 70 minis. So I had black primed them, I don't know, months ago.
Sure.
And just would then prime more black and more black and more black.
Oh,
and
I didn't know you'd already put primer on them.
Yeah,
like
so,
black primer.
Yeah, the black primer. So I just have been slowly growing a sea of black primer ones.
Yep. Okay.
Forever and ever, and yeah, I was waiting because I was going to do the acrylic with the white ink thing that. And then
what a lot of people have been doing lately for so zenithal highlighting, for those of you that don't know, is when you prime a model black completely, you get it in all the nooks and crannies underneath the arms and all that stuff. And then you spray it from pretty much just above with a white color to simulate being lit from above.
Right.
And then generally you use some sort of transparent colored paints over the top of it to then, all that kind of stuff. And you get the nice different shades and gradations and all that kind of jazz. But yeah, so you had done them all black, and then you were going to use probably like Liquitex?
Yeah, Liquitex.
The acrylic white ink, which a lot of people like to use, but then you have to add some stuff to it so that it doesn't get beat up by the next layer of paint you put over it and all that jazz. But you found something else, didn't you?
Yeah, you told me, you've been telling me I should go with the from Monument Hobbies.
The Pro Acryl primer, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, even though I hadn't touched the stuff I had ordered to do all this, I'm going to go ahead and order that. Oh wow! I was so happy I did.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, like that Pro Acryl, the white primer that they make now, that you shoot through your airbrush. You can put it on with a brush too, but then it's harder to zenithal.
Right.
But yeah, but you shoot it through an airbrush. It's the best white primer I've ever used. I've been really super happy with it.
I mean, I paused even as I was like moving minis around, or like because a lot of them I was putting them on my hobby handles. So, I only have 14 of them, 12 of them. I need 14 because I found that a lot of my stuff has 14 models. So there's always two.
Well, if you're playing Blood Bowl, I suppose.
Yeah, Blood Bowl and Legion, I think, was 14 except for the big guys. And yeah, so even swapping out with that and, kind of looking at stuff, I didn't come back to clogs in my airbrush. And
that's the other thing too, is I've found that stuff doesn't, because the white pigment has a tendency just to be kind of slightly bigger, and so that it has tendencies to clog your airbrush a little bit more. But I don't know what kind of magic they've done.
Even with thinner, I've always had problems with clogging, especially after a while. Like it'll work for a few models, and then it'll start to splatter a little bit. And you hopefully didn't screw up anything when it did get to the splatter point. Like I said, I did over 70 and no issues. I noticed that it was a little bit more gray than I wanted because it was so transparent. So, which wasn't a bad thing, because then I just went up and got my whites a little bit whiter, and it made me realize how it was a lot more forgiving than I was used to too.
Yeah, so. No, I not an ad, but yeah, that is my favorite white primer these days. They do. I use it for everything because I zenithal just about everything these days. It works really, really well, and it speeds up my painting process. So yeah. So that's, but still 70. I don't know that I've ever done 70 models at once. That's a lot of stuff.
It was every Blood Bowl team, every miniature in the Legion starter box.
Star Wars Legion, yep.
Star Wars Legion. One of my Underworld Shadespire stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A few other models I had painted and printed and stuff like that. So, yeah, it added up pretty quick.
Oh, yeah, nice. Very cool. So, then did you take any of that stuff and actually start, like, painting any of it?
Yeah. My Black Orc team from Blood Bowl, I've finally started putting paint on it this weekend.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How long did you wait between priming and starting to paint?
At least a day.
Okay, that's fine. So I've always tried to wait at least overnight between priming and then painting, because I've always been like, I swear I've had issues before where you start painting and you can kind of knock off some of the prime. And I was talking to my friend Vince about it, and he's like, no, you wait like, I don't know, 10 minutes and then you can start painting. And he said he learned that from, and I'm going to butcher the name because I'm not from Spain, it's spelled Angel Giraldez, but it's not pronounced that way. It's like Angel's.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know.
Famous painter guy, specifically airbrush. He's like a genius with airbrush and all that stuff. And Vince took a class from him, and when Angel was like, just 10 minutes. And but I've always let it sit longer, just because it makes me nervous.
Like, do it like that, and then the next day I'm like, okay, I mean, usually by time, and then I'm like, okay, I need to go clean up my airbrush, and so I'm just kind of done anyway. But yeah, because I was going to paint up actually the Shadespire stuff. I was the Warhammer Underworlds was just because they're orcs as well, and I was like, oh well, I want to play with some of my new techniques with the orcs on the 4 versus going to
like a whole army or a bunch
for the Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I didn't think they came out. They were more gray than I realized, because I hadn't done to them what I'd done to the other ones, and I thought it was going to be okay. But as I was looking, I realized that there was still some details I was missing. So I went back and redid those, added some more white and gray to it, and then went ahead into the Black Orcs. But yeah, while I was doing that, and I also started painting up the Imperial stuff for Star Wars Legion,
like the Stormtroopers and stuff. Yep, nice.
My youngest son decided that he wanted to start painting more. So
nice.
Yeah. At first, he was like, he's like, hey, can I sell the thing I did my very first paint like a year or two ago? I'm like,
I mean, you can attempt to do so.
I'm like, you can. I mean, but sorry, it's really just that's.
Yeah.
You'll want to keep that. But I said maybe someday when you're famous, people will be like, oh yeah,
very good point.
But then he was asking, well, do people pay you to paint? I'm like, well, they don't pay me, but yes, people do get paid to paint. But,
sure.
But they have to, there's definitely a skill level and a kind of a
amount of time
quality level that they expect, that someone expects if you're paying. I'm like, so you can't just go paint and they'll pay you right away. But, but you can start working towards that if you want. So, yeah, now he's coming down with me the last several nights to paint and stuff with me, and he's having fun. So
you're going to have a commission painting service coming out of your house by the next summer, I tell you.
There we go. But I did that, and then just been printing tons of stuff. I've been getting a lot of orders in, and doing stuff I was doing your buildings, and I've got some other large train pieces. So that just takes a lot of the prints are 24 to 30 hours. A run. So that takes a while and stuff. So just lots and lots of prints. I'm also helping out Gaddis Gaming with some of their prototypes and stuff.
Do you think if there was a resin printer that had as big of a build plate as an FDM printer, do you think that A, people would start printing terrain through it, and B, do you think it would print faster than FDM?
It would print faster. There's no doubt about that. The Elgu just announced the Jupiter is going to be on the Kickstarter.
Their new biggest one or whatever?
Which is 220, so it would be
220 not millimeters, yeah.
So that's, I believe the Ender 3 I have is 200, so maybe it's 250, but it's...
Well, isn't it like 30... How many centimeters is it to a foot? Isn't it like 30? Yeah, about 30, so it's less than a foot then is what you're saying.
It's less than a foot, but it's still pretty big.
Yeah, that's true.
And then it's not perfectly squared, but it even has like a resin tank that refills, so it'll be pretty darn close.
Yeah.
The problem is that the material costs has not come down as much. So right now for a kilogram, or basically a bottle of resin, I pay usually around $40-$45 a bottle.
Yeah, the stuff that I like to use is, or I will be using soon. That when I got it, I think I paid $39.95 or something like that.
The filament I've got going now through my FDM printer, I was able to get the rolls at I paid $9 a roll. For
a kilogram.
Yeah. And they're actually now advertising it for $8 as long as you have to buy like 10 of them, but no shipping, and there's no shipping cost, so that is really what, and no tax. So that's
interesting.
What I've been talking to some people that have been having me do more terrain stuff is that I'm thinking there's going to be some more hybrid terrain stuff coming for a while, where like the bulk of it is done with your FDM, and then maybe
filament type printer.
And then any kind of details, those break off pieces, like if there's like accents or like little lights and stuff like that, those will probably be done. With the
I could see that. That makes sense.
But I think the cost is really what's going to hold it up for a little bit. But at the same time, all that cost is going down, because when I first started filament printing, that was $25-$30 a roll. So
yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, no, it is amazing how quickly it keeps changing. I mean, it's like, the Elegoo Mars was like, oh man, that's a huge resin printer, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, now the Jupiter's coming next, and that's going to be even bigger, and then they're like, what's coming next? And I mean, they also have to look at it from the fact that, especially like a company like Elegoo is also producing resin, so the bigger that the thing is, the more that they can get you to buy, and you know what I mean. The more you'd be like, well, heck, I could just print this whole thing in resin. That'd be cool. And you're like, all right, well, that's why we have to add this machine that adds more resin during the course of the print, because it's so friggin' big. Yeah,
right.
That means you have to, buy more resin. So it's very interesting. That's very cool. Did you do anything else?
No, that was a busy.
It's a busy schedule.
For me, that was busy. Yeah,
no, absolutely.
So how about you?
Well, let's see here. So I've been, speaking of terrain that you printed, I've been working on some of that stuff as well. Let's see. So I painted the second sci-fi building that I'm going to be using for games like Stargrave, Space Weirdos, etc. And those are 3D print STLs that I created sort of through terrainmachine.com. So it's a kind of like, if you've ever used Hero Forge, where you get to make your own miniature, it's kind of like that, except you get to make your own building. And they've got different types of buildings, different themes. They've got these kind of sci-fi sort of generic ones. They've got ones that look like Naboo, if you're into like Star Wars Legion. They got stuff that look like Tatooine. They've also now got stuff like New York kind of like buildings, like the Bowery and Brooklyn, and like brick buildings and things like that. Which it's weird because they're 32 millimeters, so I assumed that they were for the new Marvel game,
right?
But they're technically slightly too small for the Marvel game, because the Marvel game is 40 millimeters.
Oh, that's odd.
And 28 and 32 are pretty close to each other, but 32 to 40 is a good sized jump.
Yeah, but for that kind of stuff, probably if you scaled it on the printer.
Sure. Oh, yeah. You could easily scale it in the slicing software, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, but
if it still fits, though, because like your buildings, they
true. Yeah. If you scale it, then you won't have any more space for that. Yeah, that's a good point.
So they were kind of slicing for that size.
Yeah. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting. But they've got they keep adding more stuff to that, and so anyway, I made a bunch of designs in I think they call it Dense City is the name of the theme. And then, that's what you've been printing up. So like I said, I had primed the second one of those, and I did a bunch of painting on it and some airbrushing and things like that. And then I also took some older Tatooine-style buildings that have been sitting around for a while that have been primed, even textured, and they're basically even had like detailing, but I just needed to do a bunch of like dirtying and weathering with airbrush and stuff like that. I like to shoot like Agoros Dunes is the color, or sometimes Skeleton Horde. Both of them are contrast colors from Games Workshop, and I fire those through the airbrush onto the terrain to kind of darken up, especially on the base of the building and things like that. And it just makes a nice extra added thing. So worked on that. I'm nearly finished with this big robot. It's a Redemptor Dreadnought for Warhammer 40,000. I'm not using it for Warhammer 40,000. I'll use it for nearly anything else. But I've been painting on Twitch the last month or so, and it's part of my Robots Left Behind kind of series that I've been sort of unintentionally doing for a little while, and then realized recently, I'm like, I keep making these robots that are like left behind on the battlefield to just walk around, and be lonely. And so I've got that one, which is the Redemptor Dreadnought. Previous to that, I got the Canoptic Reanimator, which is a Necron kind of big robot sort of thing. And then previous to that, I have Adeptus Mechanicus Armiger is the first one I did.
Okay.
So anyway, so that's almost done. So I'm going to be switching into a new thing soon. I may still paint on it on Friday, but I may not. I'm not sure yet.
Cool.
And then, I ordered some miniatures to be printed from Etsy. I found somebody on Etsy, and they had these. I was looking for kind of cyberpunk sort of soldiers or something like that, like sort of not crazy sci-fi, but sci-fi enough. You know what I mean? And I found somebody on Etsy who was printing some really cool stuff that was from a Patreon that I must have had a license and whatnot for.
Yeah.
And so there was like 3 models of guys, with kind of crazy cyberpunk style armor and some crazy guns, and then there were 2 robots that reminded me kind of Chappie. Did you ever watch that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's got the sort of skinny sort of security like police bot types,
Nice.
So I'm going to use them for probably Space Weirdos, etc. And so those showed up, and I built them. There wasn't a lot of building. It was basically a situation of glue the torso and the arms all as one piece, holding the gun, glue that to the legs, and then glue the head on. And the only reason that they didn't just make them all one single piece, because it's printed resin, I think is basically so that you can customize and
the pose
turn
and
it a
stuff,
little
yeah.
bit. I mean, you can't do much, but you can make the the waist kind of turn a bit and the head turn, and that's basically about it. You can't move the arms because they all come together as one piece, which is fine. So I got those guys built, put them on bases, textured their bases. There's 5 of them total, and then I did some priming, and then even a little bit last night on Twitch, I just kind of did some dry brush on them to sort of pop them a little bit, because I kind of lost a bit of the contrast wasn't as where I wanted it to be quite yet, so I did a little bit more of that. But yeah, so I don't know. I think those might be on hold a little bit for a little while, because I also went through Etsy. I've been doing Etsy a bunch lately. There's a bunch of people printing, 3D models on there. And I got an idea for a video coming up eventually about, like, can I build a Cabal for Reign in Hell, the game that me and Vince made? Can I completely build a Cabal just from Etsy? And to be perfectly frank, spoiler alert, yes, it's not that hard.
Right.
There are tips to doing it, though, because you kind of want to not have to order like one thing from this person and one thing from that person, because you're going to pay shipping on each one of those. So I made sure I found somebody who was producing stuff who had a bunch of good stuff all together, so I could order everything from the same person, and then that saved on shipping. But those all showed up yesterday, and I want to get banging on those guys because Vince is coming to visit around Labor Day weekend, and hopefully we're going to at least attempt to build or to film a battle report, or maybe even 2. Who is to say? So yeah, that'll be interesting. But I want to get those guys ready to go for that. So, and then lastly, I've just been working on the expansion for Reign in Hell as well, which is not exactly hobby related, but it's hobby-ish.
It's hobby adjacent.
Hobby adjacent, that's a good term. Yeah. So text is all locked down. We're just going through now, and the original proofreading edit is all done, and now we're just going through to just make sure that things are clear, like in the rules, so that we don't have too many questions that come back. Not that we mind questions, but if you don't have to ask us the questions, then we've done a better job.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but that's in process, and we're hoping we'd love to launch it by the very end of August, but it might be into the beginning part of September. We do both have now 3 jobs. So there's that. But yeah, so, keep him busy, never bored.
Nice.
And then not including hobby, there's actually some app news. We should have a special jingle
app
here.
News.
Yeah. Yeah, so what's
I need like the old-timey news voice.
It's a good point.
Now.
Now, here's news from the world. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I should just do the whole podcast that way. That wouldn't get
No,
completely
I'm sure
annoying at all. That. No. So what's going on with the app?
All right. So we talked a little bit about the GameFor Library Manager last week. Actually had a few people reach out about wanting to use it for upcoming conventions.
Oh, nice.
So wanted to kind of let people know that we are finalizing that. We now have, I believe, all the graphical assets we need. So we are going to be including that into the project, and there's one last feature that I want to bang out before we are finalized with version 1. So we should be submitting to the App Store hopefully this week. So I think
we still need to crank out a couple of graphics for the app stores.
Yeah.
But otherwise the graphics that go into the actual app, I think.
Right.
Yeah, that's all.
But yeah, we should be basically wrapped up, I would say, this week. So probably either Friday or Monday will be submitted to the store. So I would say look for our Twitteries or
we'll definitely social that baby up.
Yeah,
and it'll be an early. I mean, it's going to be what I guess 1.0, but it's still things will be.
Maybe we call it. Maybe we do 0.1. I don't know. No, because Apple
gets weird if you don't.
Yeah, they're like, you can't release something that's not done. And
they hate that because they're pedantic. Anyway,
they release stuff that's not done, but we're not allowed.
Well, yeah, but they numbered it 1.0 though.
Yes.
But they'll be adding features to it, things like that. That's how software works. You don't just do it once and then be like, okay, we're done, and just like just go away. So that's the trick there. And then
everybody's like, okay, so what about GameFor itself?
The actual GameFor thing,
right?
Indeed.
So we've got the roadmap pretty much set of like what features we're bringing into, what features we're bringing from the original app into the new app, what features we're tweaking or adding. So basically, the roadmap is now set. You've been working on some design layout ideas about how, because we're writing this all using
in a new language.
Yeah, there'll be a single language, so
we
should be able to produce stuff 3 times as fast because we don't have to do it 3 times.
Right. Yeah. The old version, we had to make an Apple version, we had to make an Android version, and a web version, and then this new version of the app, we are the programming platform library. What do you call it?
Yeah.
Okay, is called Flutter, and it is actually, there have been other platforms or whatever out there in the past where you like do it once and then it's supposed to make 3 different versions of it, and they've all sucked, right?
Yep. Most of the time it's been actually like we always called it the +1. Like you would write it and then you would have to do it again for each platform as well because it just.
But this new Flutter, I mean, we've been using it with clients.
Yeah, I've been building stuff on it now for almost a year and a half, 2 years, and it's been phenomenal.
So we're gonna be working with that kind of, again, this is sort of inside baseball, but it's going to help speed things up, which is great.
And we're not redoing all the back end. A lot of the back end pieces are being tweaked or done.
Database and all that.
So it's not like we're starting from the base.
Right.
We're just, the front end is kind of getting an overhaul, and we've thrown it out there that we might do some early previews of it when we relaunch it, so it might not have like everything moved back over.
Sure.
But bringing some stuff in, as we get features done, kind of doing early releases like, get the store locator. I know people have been asking us just to get the store locator back out there.
Yeah, we've had plenty of people actually emailing. Yeah, they're like, I've been traveling and I can't find stores.
We might do one. We might do an early release where there's kind of some minimal features just to kind of get stuff going without everything in there.
Yeah.
But we're definitely moving forward, and I'm feeling like it's good.
I mean,
there's news to share finally.
yeah, that's true too. And that all being said, though, we are also keeping an eye on COVID numbers and things like that.
The
Delta variant and the Omega variant and the
right. And we've already seen a couple of conventions that have
turned to the Hulk.
That have been canceled.
Isn't that what happens with the Gamma variant?
Yeah, Gamma rays made the Hulk.
Yeah. No, we've been keeping an eye on some. Yeah, you're right. Some conventions and things like that. I mean, we know some that are. I mean, like in theory, am going to Gen Con in about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm hoping so. I really am hoping so. But and there are other conventions that I think I've only got like maybe 2 other conventions I might be going to this year that are pretty small. I mean, obviously way smaller than Gen Con, but and even Gen Con this year is smaller than Gen Con.
Right.
But still, so we're keeping an eye on that. We're keeping an eye on different states and like stores, and there are some stores that are like, yeah, definitely we're having events again. There's other ones that are like, well, we're not really.
Right.
So we got to keep an eye on that as well.
And we also are trying to come up with a way to make online in non-physical gaming a better part of the app. So
the coordination part of
right.
it. Yeah.
So that should all be coming, and we'll kind of keep updating you through here.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of what I'm doing with that is because I'm a visual designer, so part of what I'm doing with that is to do the look, the look and feel to some degree, and that kind of stuff, which is sometimes referred to as presentation.
Ooh, nice transition.
See, I'm a segue machine over here. Anyway, so the point of today's talk, podcast, that's what you call it, is about whether or not presentation really matters in your tabletop games. Now, what does that mean in that situation? Does it mean like when you're sitting down to play Dungeons and Dragons, or do you dim the lights and turn on cool music and all that kind of? I mean, technically, I guess, but really, what we're talking about in presentation is what the game looks like.
Yeah, what's in the box? What's on the box?
What's in the box? 7 reference. Anyway, but yeah, that's. I mean, not just the box, but the books and all the components and all this stuff. If you look at board games from 10, 20 years ago, it's very different to what we see these days, and not just in subject matter or in rules systems and things like that, but like, I mean, and I think that, I think Kickstarter has something to do with this, don't you?
I think there's a lot of things that have kind of all but yeah, I think Kickstarter, better and more readily available imaging tools. You've got art departments that are now probably more digital than non-digital. The ones that have started out with being digital.
I think it's the consumers, though, too.
Expectations.
It's back and forth. It's the consumers who are like, I'm expecting more, but it's because the publishers gave them more, and then it just sort of kind of feeds back and forth, I think. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But so, what we're talking about here as far as, presentation. So, firstly, you have the visual look of the game, right? You've got the cover of the book, the cover of the box, the internal art inside the book, not so much the box. Generally, you have more artwork inside the...
Less nowadays, yeah.
Yeah, you don't really have artwork on the inside of the box. That's about it. But it's mostly about the the outside of the box. But then once you open the box, there's probably pamphlets or books or instructions and stuff like that. And you're seeing more and more of them being full color, more and more of them having a lot of artwork, that kind of stuff. Layout, also very important, not just from making something aesthetically pleasing, but also... You're finding that they're getting more and more people in the industry who understand the user experience of layout. Mm-hmm. Like, if I needed to look this up, where would I look in the book? And if you don't put the information in the right spot, then people are like, I am flipping through this book so much just trying to find out where this such and such rule is, I mean, how many people have you seen at the game store where their rule book for, let's say, a game like Warhammer or something or other or whatever has got tons and tons of post-it notes or those little flags that you stick to the page,
for the sign here. Yep.
Yeah. And it'll just be tons of them, and each one of them will have a little note on there. So when you're like, now where's the such and such? Where's the rules about armor state? Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah.
But now, like I the last few games I bought, the thing there's a lot of like quick references on the back.
Yeah,
I love that. Mm-hmm. Table contents. There's now one, glossaries, all that stuff.
There's a joke kind of that goes around, at least in the miniature game industry, about how I don't know, somebody at Games Workshop seems to be allergic to the concept of an index in the back of the book. You know what I mean? They just don't seem to want to do it. So that's also part of presentation to some degree, certainly. The questions about like, do you go with a black and white part to your book? Do you go with the color? I mean, in general, these days, like when I think about all the RPGs that I used to like read, and I never played a ton. I played D&D and I played some other ones here and there, but I owned a lot of RPGs because I loved buying them and reading them and then knowing I very likely wasn't going to play this. So many of them were black and white on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
Most of them were black and white on the inside.
Even like the expensive ones were still like mainly, maybe the cover was in color, and maybe
there were some plates on the inside where they were like in the middle of the book that were like in color.
Right, but for the most part, it was grayscale everywhere.
Yeah, it was black and white, and that would be in many situations, especially in a big, expensive, like what you would call professional, and I just made air quotes there in case you're wondering at home, professional product. Black and white insides would be like a kiss of death. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like people would like literally be like, "Oh, I'm really interested in playing this game. It sounds awesome and all this stuff," and they'd be like, "Oh, but the insides are black and white." Oh, you know what I mean? And that's an interesting thing. That's something we haven't seen as much lately. But yeah. So
like even like Games Workshop, like their newer like assembly instructions aren't even just in grayscale black and white anymore. Like now they've got colors for like like these color components, like this is the component. It's almost like Lego now. It's like this shade means it was already assembled here. Here's from the last step, and here's the new part.
Yeah, the actual directions they show you to like put these models together are a lot of times these done in color. And there's benefit to it, I think. At least in that situation, I can see why they're doing it, and it's to color code stuff. So oh, this section goes here and this goes that. Yep. That's cool. But yeah, it's interesting. But the thing that I think is really interesting is it's not just the printed books or the printed instructions that are in these boxes or any kind of stuff. There's also, especially in the board gaming world, but not just in the board gaming world, you've got so many components now. Fancy custom dice, which are not just for board games anymore, because Lord knows there are several RPGs that are going down that road, especially stuff that comes from Fantasy Flight. You know what I mean?
Say just anything Fantasy Flight.
Pretty much anything Fantasy Flight. They are addicted to custom dice. But you've got all those types of things. You've got the meeples. You've got the
and that's the funny thing is that even like 15 years, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
If you played like a Euro style game or whatever, it was meeples and cubes, colored cubes,
exactly, which were made out of wood, all that stuff.
Yeah, and that was just kind of standard. And if you look at almost any podcast that started in a time, it usually has some play on the word meeple.
That's true. No, that's very true.
And now
try and buy a game with a meeple in it.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. Yeah.
No.
I noticed that I don't know if it's Root but it's one of those from Leader
That's
Games.
Root for everybody else.
Well, whatever. But it is like they have kind of like little wooden figures that are sort of meeple-y, but even them, they're printed on there. Like there's stuff like printed on there and everything, which is cool. It makes it look nice. But is it, I guess the question is it well, and we'll get to that in a bit,
right.
But, whether it's actually useful or not. But then it's not just, again, the components. Again, it's the box and the board and, like, if you...
The cards are,
Oh, and super crazy thick and, like, linen, texture to them and things like that and whatever, and all kinds of other materials. In wargaming now, you're starting to see, all the time, especially, like, in games like Star Wars Legion, like you mentioned earlier, the Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Yep.
What was the name somebody called it last night on Twitch? Crispy Pancakes, that's what it was. And Marvel Crispy Pancakes. Because I could never remember what MCP stands for, because Crisis Protocol is just sort of random. At least it seems so. So anyway, my point is that custom rulers, and now the new version of Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team, custom rulers,
templates.
Yeah. And there are sometimes benefits to that. I can see the reasoning, and other times I feel like it's a little weird, but that's more components and that's more presentation and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So the question then really becomes, at least in my opinion as an old man, does presentation make the game actually better? Does it add value? I mean, it adds money, adds cost, certainly.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, I believe that the answer is no, but actually yes. And let me try to explain, I guess. So my good friend Vince and I, we produced a game called Rain and Hell, which is basically, like I was talking before about how, black and white insides, kiss of death. Well, we did black and white insides. Color cover, but black and white insides, soft cover, not hard cover, and it's just a book. But we also sell it for cheap. It's like $15, and you get the PDF with it for free as well if you want to. So that's not bad. Now there are other books on that same service. We use this service called WarGameVault.com, and they do all the we produce everything, and then they're the ones that do the fulfillment and the They do take care of all the credit card junk and all that jazz. So there are plenty of other rule sets that are out there on that system that have literally almost no presentation. Like you look at them, they're black and white cover or black and white insides, but ours is black and white insides. But they've got generally almost no art, and it looks like it was laid out in Word, like in the whatever the normal base font is.
If
Times
even
New
that.
Roman. Yeah, if that, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like MS Paint almost.
Yeah, and the thing is that could be a great and really fun rule set. It really can. There are probably some real diamonds in the rough hidden, and I do mean hidden in that system, but no one will ever know because the cover is not anything the person wants to particularly look at, doesn't catch the eye. So there is a benefit. When you really get down to brass tacks, the presentation has very little to do with the actual gameplay. You know what I mean?
Right.
But there is something to be said from a couple different angles about what the presentation does bring to the game. Like, I could have spent far less time on layout and art direction and stuff like that for our game, but I don't think it would have made the book or even the PDF be a thing that a person, I don't want to say cherishes, but like, you know what I mean? Like,
appreciate.
Sometimes you get like, you see a new piece of tech and it's not even a thing you're interested in, but you're just like, this is so like nice
appealing,
and tactile and appealing for whatever reason. Like, you're not a photographer, but like this little tiny camera that just is like fits in like a perfect rectangle.
I used any Mac stuff. Like, I didn't really want a Mac because I didn't, before I had to do iPhone programming stuff, just didn't have any, reason to have a Mac because they were expensive and I didn't do graphics.
Yeah.
But everything that they did, I just was like, wow, that looks nice. Like,
they spend. I mean, really, Apple is the kind of the king of presentation as far as that kind of stuff is concerned.
Yeah, even the box, like
how
you unwrap it is like.
Exactly, like the whole concept of like how you get how you get the phone out of the box from all these companies, and it's not just Apple. The other guys are
the other ones have stepped it up. Yeah,
like they want to make it. If you're going to spend a whole boatload of money on something, they want to make it worth your while, or at least seemingly.
It's an experience.
So.
Yeah,
exactly.
You don't open it up and it's wrapped in old newspaper.
Yeah, no, that would probably be good. I mean, it'd be recycling. That's pretty cool. You get to read newspaper from other parts of the world. That's fun. But that would not fly. And this is the same thing in gaming. You get like when you're at the store and you walk by a bunch of boxes that are on the shelves of different board games, or you walk by a bunch of covers of a bunch of books that are all RPGs and stuff like that, you're trying to catch the person's eye. You know what I mean? So the presentation portion of that can be very important. Now, again, what that means is that we do have a tendency sometimes to do one of two things. We either miss, again, like I said, diamonds in the rough, right? Or sometimes we look at something and we go, wow, that is spectacular. And then you buy it and get it home and you read it and you're like, wow, this is garbage. Right, exactly. It's, and I've got those books. I've purchased a bunch of them, as it turns out.
Well, and I know the other ones where I see them at the conventions. I'm like, oh, they've got tons of D&D books. And I'm like, oh, they might be good inside, but they just don't look like they spent any time. And I think that for me is, even if it's more self-conscious than, I feel like if somebody spends enough time to make it look good on the outside, then they probably spent enough time to make it good on the inside.
It doesn't mean
that it will.
Yeah, exactly. But you at least feel like it's more likely.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, they cared enough about what they produced that they were like, I need to present it as best as I can to the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's partially, there are, Lord knows that there are folks out there who are gamers because of they love the components, they love the stuff. I mean, you wouldn't see so many unboxing videos on YouTube if that wasn't part of it for people,
Absolutely.
Right? You know what I mean? So the concept basically of, is this actually important? Is it important to have good presentation? Again, like I said, no, but actually yes. Can you play a game that has lousy presentation? Absolutely can. You can.
Right. If someone handed you, your favorite game, but it was just the most basic version of those components, but you could still play the game.
Yeah.
It wouldn't mean the game was any worse, but you would feel that there was something missing.
I think some of my favorite tortilla chips ever were back in the 80s. Do you remember the generic chips and the generic all the food? Were you in Canada? Were you even born then? I don't even remember.
So how old are we going?
I don't know. Well, I remember back in the 80s, I would go to the grocery store and there would be generic stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just black and white, and it just said beer on it.
Oh, yeah, the new
name. Or
name.
just chips. Yeah, it was just generic brand, and they didn't spend any money on it, and it was admittedly a bit of a kind of a thing.
The supermarket,
right. But it wasn't even like, I'm a supermarket brand. It would just say beer, and it would just be a white can with black letters and block letters and stuff like that. And still to this day, my favorite tortilla chips, I think, are just the generic tortilla chips from whoever made those. I don't know why. Nothing else was quite as good. Well, I mean, go to a restaurant, but still. And so that's kind of a weird thing. So, admittedly, when you walk by the things on the shelf at the grocery store, those things have been generally, almost to a degree, scientifically designed to get you to grab them. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But what they look like in the bag has nothing to do with what they might taste like or whatever, so there's that too. But that doesn't also mean that you can maybe find, like I said, a generic bag of chips that just says tortilla chips on it that are spectacular for some reason. Anyway, so yeah, presentation doesn't really matter. The game is what really matters. But there are plenty of folks who enjoy a good rule set, but also enjoy a nice piece of merchandise that they've bought that's well put together.
Well, I know that you have, and I know I have bought rule sets just for the artwork.
Oh yeah. Or and even beyond the artwork, sometimes it's the artwork and the writing. But yeah, no, absolutely. I know I've done that. I mean, mostly RPG books. I'm like, I know I'm never going to play this, but it looks awesome. I want to read it, and I'm going to have a good time with that, and that's fine by me. But that's, the presentation is important in that situation, even though it doesn't really technically matter to the game. But it is a thing that, good presentation seems to spark joy, I think, in a lot of players. And it's kind of like in apps and stuff like that, too, It's not important that when you click on this thing, it sort of wiggles a little bit or it rotates just a certain way or whatever. That doesn't make it easier for you to purchase a pizza or whatever.
Right.
But there's an app I use to buy camera stuff from this company in New York. And when you go to their actual giant, huge facility in New York, they have these conveyor belts that go all over the building. So when you're like, I want this thing, you set it on a conveyor belt, or the people there set it on the conveyor belt, with a B&H photo. And then it basically conveyor belts all the way down to wherever they're going to check it out, and then they kind of hold it there for you, and then when you come down, you're like, yeah, that and that's mine, or whatever.
Okay.
And I've never been there because I've never been to New York yet, but I've seen videos of it, seen pictures of it. When you go to use their app and you add something to your cart, it goes up towards the top of the screen to a tiny little conveyor belt, which then takes it off the edge of the screen.
Oh, nice.
That's extra work. That's extra programming and messing around they had to do.
They spent a good chunk of change just to do that.
Exactly, but that's just a little not microtransaction. What is the term? It's not microaggression. It's a micro something. Right?
Interaction?
Micro interaction, I think, maybe is the right technical
experience?
Term. Yeah, micro experience. But it's a thing that makes you kind of just enjoy the action of doing a relatively mundane thing a little bit more. So sitting down and playing a board game, sitting down and playing Magic with all black and white cards, you could do it, certainly. But the artwork, I think, also sparks some joy and imagination and all that kind of stuff when you're playing, So that is important. And it also draws eyes to the purchase itself, so that's important. So then the question really does become, is good presentation worth it? To you as a player, it may not, but to most, I think it does, have something to do with, and again, you have to kind of figure out where the line is as a person. Do you want to buy the deluxe version of this?
Right. Yeah.
Is that important to you? As far as presentation is concerned, or would the regular version, which is also lovely and looks nice and has good parts, hey, these are little wooden blocks, but if you buy the fancy schmancy version of it, you get little tiny sculpted, I don't know, metal pieces or something like that.
Yeah, there's the ones where it's cardboard coins or metal coins.
Right, exactly.
It's I actually like the metal coins. I feel better. Yeah.
Game doesn't play any different.
Poker chips.
Oh, absolutely. How much do people spend on poker chips?
Oh, I just got at a golf outing this last week. They were handing for the golf outing. Everyone got the clay poker chip.
Yeah, the really nice ones. Yeah, the clay
ones.
I
love those.
Yeah. No, it's
the plastic ones worked, and they do the same exact thing. But there's
but there's something about it. Oh yeah, when I was a kid, like my parents had like a little poker set that had like these thin little little plastic,
the red, white, and blue.
Yeah, the red, white, and blue plastic poker chips, and they were fine. And that's what everybody had in that little round thing. Yep. You know what I mean? But now, if you've got friends now that you're an adult to play poker, even sort of a bunch, or even not even that much, but they play it, a couple times a month, they probably have fancy schmancy, like thick, like casino style poker chips. So yeah, it's that same thing. And then as a publisher / designer, the presentation should be very important because of all the things that we've been saying, frankly, over the course of this particular show. We know that a lot of people out there look at presentation very importantly. You know what I mean? They look at it and they go, okay, well, this cover is great. I love this thing. Like this game that I've been really enjoying, Space Weirdos. One of the reasons I initially looked at it is because the cover on it was spectacular. Mm-hmm. I saw it on War Game Vault. I was just like, wow, that is fun. Then I just looked it over and I was like, all right, it's $5, and you can kind of see a little bit of the front, like several pages of the book. And it's like a little 16-page zine, and I like zines. And so everything about the presentation was fun, but then I got it, and I was like, I really like these rules, too. This is a lot of fun. So, yeah.
Right. And there might be a game that's actually even a little bit better, but they didn't have the presentation, so it gets missed.
I'll be very honest. Yeah, he's produced games in the past that didn't have nearly as nice looking of a cover, and there may be games that are just as good, but I didn't look at them in the past because I kind of looked at the cover and went, spending as a publisher and a designer, spending that money and having like your art and your special cool components and stuff like that can be a big deal to some folks.
Oh, absolutely. There's as many times as I'm told not to judge a book by its cover.
Exactly.
I still judge.
They tell you don't judge a book by its cover, but you can sometimes get a gist of the plot. So. Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, with the game that we designed recently, we knew obviously we're going to need to have like a color cover, even though we did technically go with a black and white kind of ink drawing on the cover, but we were looking for a specific look,
Right.
And we did spend some money to get those photos that we took of the models like digitally repainted and stuff, so they looked like they had like cool, smoky, gritty, and dead trees and stuff like that behind them and all that jazz. And they turned out great. The artwork was really fun. Spent a decent amount of time on the layout and things like that, and it comes across. People enjoy it more than if it would have just been done in Arial, 12 point, and just with a bold headline here and there and that kind of stuff. You've got to take that time, I think, as a publisher or designer, because people do think that way. They look at it and they go, "Oh yeah, this is something."
The new Kickstarter from Gaddis Gaming, Empire Falls. His new book looks like it's all stuff from World War II,
like an old journal almost.
Yeah, journal, and like the photos look like they were placed there, and the type is all like it was typed up, like the
like reports
player
and
cards.
Stuff like that.
They all look like they're typewritten and stuff like that. I mean, most of the rule set is very similar, almost exactly to Shattered Crown. It's all based on the guard system.
Yeah,
Shattered Crown was pretty much like
again, like Word,
or
like
Word
that.
And stuff like that. And
there were some images and things like
that.
But
I guarantee that you put the two next to each other, one was just going to go, oh, so that one's probably the better game, even though they're pretty much the same.
And I think there's something to be said, not that it's even just more appealing, but I think that as a person judging two games, they are judging that, well, someone spent a lot more time and money on this one.
Right.
So therefore, it's probably better. Now, that's not necessarily the case.
No, absolutely.
Again, we're going to say that. I think that
there are definitely exceptions to that.
Sure, yeah.
But
and in Gaddis Gaming's situation, I think both games are pretty good. You've played both at this point, but it was like earlier in the kind of time of the company when the first game came out, and now that they're doing better.
Grassroots, and now now they were able to do a Kickstarter all that stuff. Yeah.
So no, absolutely, I'm super glad that. That I think we're starting to see more and more even small groups who are like, look, I've got this really cool idea, but I don't know how to make it look good. I don't know how to up the presentation. And I think you're starting to see more people who are able to work with people online and find commission painters, commission layout artists, commission people who can do covers and stuff like that, and then. That's, I think, where a lot of the funds, honestly, that's where a lot of the funds go for Kickstarters these days.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because the art costs a lot.
I just did a large proof of concept project. And it was me and a few other developers. We got it done, and now they're looking to commercialize it.
Sure.
And like the number one thing for the budget is design.
Oh, yeah. No, you have to. Visual design, like in an app these days. You can pick up an app that like does a spectacular job on whatever it's supposed to do, but if it is got bad user experience, like it's hard to figure out what should I click next.
Yep.
You know, that's going to definitely cause trouble. And if it's just not kind of pretty, you know, or at least enjoyable to use in that fashion, then that's user interface, and then that becomes problems as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, presentation, it seems to some degree to be shallow, and to some people it's just not important, and that's fine. But it seems, at least in this day and age, that to the majority of the people, it is important. The thing is that it may be hiding a game that's meh, but it may not be hiding a game that's
right.
It may be actually, you know, it may be showing you like a really good game. And on the other hand, poor presentation could be also hiding a really good game. Yep. So you don't know. But especially as a publisher, that kind of stuff, I think it's a great idea to really try to spend money to get people interested visually in the gaming, because that we have the technology to do so much more easily
and there's
these days.
So many competitors out there now. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
It's one thing when it was like, you know, if you were in the 80s and you're like, oh, I built a game that's about zombies.
Sure.
There wasn't 5,000 other zombie games out there, so people are like, oh, cool, yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's printed on a 3x5 and in a little plastic bag.
Yeah, yeah.
Nowadays, people will be like, yeah, how much you want for that? Like, you're
right.
not just giving that out to me?
I mean,
like,
there are certain people who nostalgia-wise might look at it and go,
right.
oh, I remember like the old zines and whatever, that kind of stuff, or I remember the old... But most people will be like, yeah, I want that not printed in black and white, please. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, you know, let us know in the comments or shoot an email or something like that about things that you... like maybe games that you found that like you thought, hey, the presentation on this is not great, but this is a diamond in the rough. This is definitely something cool.
Mm-hmm.
Or... you know, maybe let us know about a game that you were like, this is super pretty, and I really dig all the little parts, and then you found out you don't like playing it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, presentation is something I think you need to think about within your tabletop gaming, and sometimes think that maybe the presentation is hiding the fact that the rules system's not very fun, and you think it's just you that doesn't enjoy the game, but maybe it's actually just not a great game, just well visually designed. You know what I mean? Thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player, or you just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@iamgamefor.com. You can also keep up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check out our website at www.gamefor.com. Sorry, www.iamgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.
Thanks.